If you love creating your own unique home decor using thrift shop finds, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. I'm starting off with this wooden bowl that I got at the Goodwill for $3.49, although it was 50% off on that day. And this is my inspiration. These beaded wooden bowls that are white. They're beautiful. You can find them on different websites. This last one here is from Amazon, but $68 for a bowl, $118 for a bowl. There's absolutely no way on earth I'm going to be spending that kind of money when I know a little bit of paint can do wonders. You can probably see that it has been partially sanded, and I did start off with some acetone to try and get some of that stain off. It worked a little bit. I also was using my rotary tool, but that just started to get really tiresome. So I decided instead I'm going to take this clay chalk paint and give it a couple of coats, and hopefully none of that dark color will seep through when I paint it white. I let that paint dry overnight, and now I'll be giving it almost 3 coats of white paint. I'm going to do the outside first, and then I'll start doing the inside. Then I went through my stash of beads and found all the little teeny tiny ones that I could. And because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get all the way around the rim, I decided to start with north, south, east, and west, and then just eyeball the center of each gap. You'll see what I'm doing in a minute here. I'm also using some no nails because I want this to dry super hard and I want it to be a permanent hold. So I'm just using a little plastic knife, putting some onto the bowl, and then pushing the bead right into place. Each time I add a bead, I'm going to be putting it in the midpoint of 2 beads. So as you can see here, I'm just eyeballing the midpoint of the space between these 2 beads and adding another bead. And I'm just going to continue that all the way around. Once I get even smaller, I'll still do the same thing. Eyeball the center of it or the midpoint and glue the bead on. And eventually I will have this all filled up. Both of my inspiration pieces had different sizes of beads, so it really depends just on the rim of your bowl. For this bowl, it had a very narrow rim, so these tiny little beads were perfect. So here's my bowl with all of the little tiny beads on. They're not 100% perfectly placed, but that's okay. This is a DIY project. It does not have to be perfect, but you do have to love it when you're done. I'm taking some spackling now. I like this Drydex brand, which is the pink that turns white when it's dry. Again, just using the little plastic knife and adding a little tiny bit of the spackling inside the top of each of the beads. This doesn't have to be perfect either. When the spackling was dry, I just used my finger and a paper towel to gently buff off any of the rough edges. I didn't want to use some sandpaper because I was afraid that if I pushed a little too hard, that maybe I would knock some of the beads off. But I have to say, they are stuck on there really well. To make the painting of the beads go a little bit quicker, I first gave them a quick spray of white chalk paint, and that just helped so I didn't have to spend so much time painting these tiny little beads. Then all I had to do was take a small brush and just go over them very roughly and in between them just to do some touch-ups. Then I also did a couple more coats of the white on the inside of the bowl to give it a really nice, crisp look. This is how I styled the bowl, and I think it looks beautiful. I have been on the hunt for wall pockets lately. I don't know why. I just think they're so pretty. And when I found this one for $2.79 at the thrift store, even though it's red and it has Christmas designs on it, I knew I could do something different with it. I'm using one of the IOD trimming molds and some air dry clay, and I'm just going to be pushing it into the area that I'm going to be using. I'm going to make sure that I get everything pushed in there really well. I did add some cornstarch to the mold first. That just helps the clay to release and you don't get any splits. Now, this clay is really, really soft. It's not one that I've used before, so I had to be extra careful when removing it from the mold. What I loved about this clay is that it is so soft, I didn't have a hard time working it. So this would be super easy for anyone to do, even if you've got arthritis in your hands like me. I've got a link to it down in the description box. It's in my Amazon store with a bunch of other clay options as well. I'm using Weld Bond glue and I'm going to put quite a bit on the top, actually probably a little bit too much, but I wanted to make sure that all the surface of the tin was covered with glue so the flat surface of the mold would stick completely everywhere. Because this clay is super soft, I was able to stretch it just a little wee bit and make sure that I had everything where I wanted it to be. It laid down really well. It didn't shrink when it dried overnight, and I was super happy with how this turned out. I am going to be adding another smaller mold on top of this one to cover up the top of those Christmas trees. My favorite paint to use when I'm spray painting is Rust-Oleum. This is the Painter's Touch 2-in-1. It's paint with a primer, and I really love all the colors that they have available. And to be honest, it is the least expensive spray paint at my hardware store. I'm going to give it one good coat, and then I'm going to come back and touch up any areas where you can still see a little bit of the red poking through. At first thought, I was going to be distressing this. I thought maybe with a little bit of white or gray, maybe even some wax over the clay areas to make them pop. But when I saw the finished look just with the black, it has a slight sheen to it. I fell in love and I decided that I wasn't going to put anything else on here. What I'd like to know is if you were doing this project, would you add anything else to it? Would you distress it? Would you do it a different color? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know. For a final touch, I added some pool noodles down into the bottom of the tin and some of these florals from Michael's and the dollar stores, and I love this piece. I have not decided where I'm going to hang it yet, but I know it's going to get a special spot really soon.
Our hearts beat to the city streets. We began to feel the fire. We rise like tall buildings as the chemicals they take us higher.
Cutting boards are one of my favorite things to thrift. I'm always on the lookout for them, but I always make sure that they are a solid wood piece and not that bamboo that you see a lot nowadays. I've made a stain that is going to blend in with that burn mark on here, and that's just going to give it even more character. I'm using a paper towel just to wipe it on, and I'm going to make sure that I go all the way around the edges and the bottom and top as well. Now I'm taking a piece of candle wax. This is just something that was a tea light and I just popped it out of its little container. I'm rubbing it around all of the edges where I want the paint not to stick. So I am going to be painting this, and then the candle wax won't allow the paint to adhere to the board, which will give me a really rustic, weathered look. I'm using some white acrylic paint. I buy a gallon of this at my hardware store and I use it all the time. If I wanted to have chalk paint, I would just add a little bit of baking soda, or normally I would just use some talc. But you don't really need it for this project. I'm going over it with one coat and I'm not going to be very thick with it. If some of the wood is already showing through and you see some brush strokes, that will just add to the character of this piece. Now it is time for the reveal. I'm using some coarse grit sandpaper, but I'm not using a lot of pressure. All I'm going to be doing is going over the whole thing, and wherever the wax was, it's going to be pulling that wax up onto the sandpaper to reveal the dark wood underneath. I love this technique. I don't use it very often, but I think I might have to do it a little bit more because I really love how this one turned out. I knew I wanted to put something on this that could hold a little bit of floral. I rummaged through my stash and came across this glass test tube. So I went out to my garage, I grabbed a hose clamp and put it on there just to give it a little bit of a rustic look. And I'm going to use hot glue and my Weld Bond glue in combination to make sure that this sticks onto the board really well. I won't be putting anything heavy in here, probably just one sprig of faux greenery, but I wanted to make sure that this test tube would stick and stand the test of time. Once the hot glue dried, I added a little bit more on either side of the glass for a little bit of extra support, and then I added this beautiful spring stem.
We wanna chase the night, wanna dance to the light, pull the stars from the sky, just two hearts running wild. Never sleep, never stop, as we shout from the top. We're gonna be.
I found the majority of the items that I'm going to be working with today at the Goodwill. And for this beautiful crate, which looks almost brand new, I paid $2.99. I believe it would be for a bottle of wine, but I decided to make it into some farmhouse decor. I'm going to paint both of the sides and the inside of the sides with white, but I'm going to leave the slats on the front and the back in the wood color. I just like that combination of the white with the wood. You'll have to let me know if you like that combination too, or if you think I should have painted the whole thing white. I thought it would be fitting to use this Devonshire Clotted Cream IOD stamp, and the ink that I use is just from a dollar store. I've seen this ink in different areas, but I know that Walmart carries some good ink. You don't have to spend $20 or $30 on an ink pad. You can buy one for $5 or $6 and it will work just as well. I'm going to use the same one on the other side, and it was really easy to get these centered because I put the points of this stamp in the middle of the slats on either side. So it turned out pretty good, even just with me eyeballing it. I paid 50 cents for this milk jug. It's not vintage by any means, but it's got some neat labels and it has a cow on it. So what I'm going to do with it is just take my DIY chalk paint. I'm not going to water it down or anything, but I'm going to pour a decent amount inside the bottle and then just roll it around so the paint covers the inside, and that will make it look like it has milk in it. Then what I'll do is just turn it upside down and let the rest of the paint drain out. Now just be aware that paint, when you do this on the inside of a bottle, it usually takes a couple of days for the paint to dry completely, sometimes even 3 or 4 days. So just be aware of that before you start adding any decor to it. In my opinion, I think this is the best way to paint glass bottles or jars, and you get that nice glossy finish on the outside from the original jar, but then you get any type of color that you want to pour in on the inside. This is what it looked like when I put these two together.
Today's video is all about showing you what you can do without paying a Pottery Barn price and DIYing some projects for yourself. Most of the items that I have today in this video came from the thrift store. Some of them might be from the dollar stores, but most of the stuff is from my stash. I'm using my favorite permanent glue, which is Weld Bond glue, because it's not just a wood glue. It works for glass, ceramic, tile, plastic, you name it. So this is basically a permanent glue, and it really holds up nicely, and it actually sticks pretty quickly. So it cures in about 24 hours, but after about 10 minutes or so, you can actually work with your projects. So it's not like E6000 where it's still going to slide around a little bit. That's why I love it. And it is available in my Amazon store if you want to try it out. So I've got a bowl that was in my stash, and this just came from one of my dollar stores. I've got a couple of pieces of these wood coasters. They came from the Dollar Tree at some point. There's little holes in them, so they've actually already been used for a project, and now I'm reusing them just to create a little bit of height because there's a dip in the bottom of the bowl. The next thing I'm going to be gluing on is the candlestick, and you can see that it was originally a glass one. It was painted black, then it was painted white, and then distressed. So I am using everything that I have in my stash and just repurposing them. The little wood bowl is going to be the base at the bottom, and this is what I'm trying to create. This is called a Farmstead Stoneware footed serving bowl, and it retails for $59. I for sure thought that I could do this for way less, and I'm probably spending only about maybe $8 on mine, and that includes everything, even the paint. Once it had sat for a couple of hours, I took it outside and I gave it a couple of coats of white spray paint in just a satin finish. That just happens to be what I had in my stash. Before I did that, though, I did actually cover the inside with some newspaper and some painter's tape because I didn't want the inside to get any paint on it. I want that to still be able to be food safe. When you're doing projects like I am, I'm painting a lot. I'm investing in my tools. And this brush is from Stahlmeister, and it's the pointed sash, and it is my absolute favorite brush. I've tried different chalk paint brushes and just using regular dollar store brushes, and I thought I'm going to give these a try. And you know what? I am not going back to any other type of brush. The bristles are so soft, and you can even leave the paint on this for a couple of days just wrapped in plastic, and the cleanup is still going to be as easy as if the paint was just being used. Warm water and the paint just slides right off the bristles. These are amazing. I do have a bunch of them listed in my Amazon store, but I highly recommend this brush in particular because it has all of the points at the top of it and it gets into all of the little cracks and crevices really easily. I did 2 coats of that paint that I showed you and I let it sit overnight to completely dry. Now I'm taking a little bit of burnt umber and a little bit of water and I've put it in this glass and I've just mixed it together. And then I took my brush and just dipped it in the water and then drained off a lot of it. And now what I'm doing is just creating a stoneware texture and I'm going to show it to you up close in just a second. There it is. Look at that beautiful texture that you get just by tapping your brush a little wee bit. You get a bunch of speckles on there and it looks exactly like a stone finish. I'm going to continue doing this with the brown until I get the look that I like. I'm not going to go overboard with it. I just want to have some speckles all the way around. Then I'm going to switch over to some black acrylic paint. Again, just mix it with a tiny little bit of water, dip my brush in it, dragging my brush against the edge to get the majority of the water off, and then tapping it against my project. And the look of it turned out exactly how I wanted it to. I'm so excited that this actually looks almost exactly like the same pattern and color and texture that's on the Pottery Barn one. Let's do a side-by-side comparison. So here's the Pottery Barn one for $59, and here's mine, which probably cost me about $8. Yes, they look different, but I think I was pretty spot on with the color and the texture of the stone. I'm really happy with how mine turned out. If you're stopping by my channel for the first time, thanks so much for clicking on my video. If you like what you see so far, I'd love it if you could hit that red subscribe button and stick around a while.
I'm using one of the IOD trimmings mold, and this one that I'm using is all roses. And I'm going to just use the IOD clay because that's what I happen to have on hand. I don't think I would buy this clay again. It's a little pricey for the amount that you get. And I do find that the DOS clay from Michaels or online on Amazon works just as well. I like to use this little handheld roller once I've got my clay in, and I'm just going to be rolling it around to make sure that the back of the clay, which is the top, what you see here, is nice and flat. Then I won't have any bumps and everything will lay smoothly for me. Then I'm going to take my finger and just pull off all of that clay from the micro rim. I really love using these IOD clay molds because of that micro rim. It makes it so nice and clean, but they are a little pricey too. So I just make sure I find some on sale. And when I do, then I grab a whole bunch. For these long molds, I like to flip the mold upside down and then very carefully just start peeling it back. And look at how beautiful it is. These molds are gorgeous. They have so much detail, and I think this is so pretty. What I'm going to do is glue it onto this half wall basket. When I'm working with clay, I like to use the Gorilla Glue Clear Grip glue, and that's what I have here. It comes in a silver tube. I squeeze out some of it and then I use my finger to spread it out towards the edges because I want to make sure that the center gets some, but also all of those edges because this basket has a rounded shape to it. So I'm going to need to mold the clay into the shape of the basket. Now, the trimming mold is a little bit rounded, as you can see here, but my basket is straight across. So what I'm going to do is just very gently push up the clay and make it go straight across rather than the rounded shape that it had. And this didn't distort anything. It actually turned out really well. The next thing I do is just take my hand and very gently push it down onto the basket, making sure that the glue can connect as often as possible without actually squishing the shape of the mold. So you do have to be a little bit careful, but these are quite forgiving. So just very gently make sure that you press it all down at the top, at the bottom, and then let it dry for a long time. I usually let mine go overnight. I gave the basket quite a few coats of a white satin spray paint, and now I'm just going to take my chip brush in black and very gently just go over the roses to bring out all of those details. And that's it for this basket. It's ready to decorate. Project number 4 is also using a thrifted item. This was a candelabra that I found at the thrift store long time ago, and it's just been waiting for me to do something with it. So I'm just taking some of these pliers or grips or whatever you want to call them, and I'm just taking that center metal piece and bending it back and forth really strongly until it pops off. I'm going to do that for all of them. Then I'm going to take some of these saucers that were also a thrift store find. I think I have 8 or 10 of them, and I think they were like $3. What I'm going to use is some of my Weld Bond glue and some hot glue, and I'm going to actually put these right on top of the 3 spaces for the candelabra. This is going to give me some space where I can put something on or display some candles or put some vases on. It's going to open up a lot more possibilities than just candles. For this first center one, I was able to do it upside down to make sure that it was nice and centered. But then for the other ones, I'm going to have to flip it over. So I let this one set up for a little bit, and then I flipped it over and glued the other 2 on the same way. As a crafter, and if you're a crafter, you know this, you save everything. These are 2 candle jars that I've had for a while. I keep all of this stuff in a bin down in my basement, and then I just go through it when I need something. I'm going to be gluing on 2 of these little drawer pulls, and I think these are perfect little cloches for my candelabra. My saucers are pretty much dried, and now I'm just taking some of this Rust-Oleum matte clear finish, and I'm just spraying a little bit along the top and the sides because this is going to really help my chalk paint stick better. And I know chalk paint sticks to a lot of surfaces, but these are really slick. So anything that is ceramic or glass, I always put my sealer coat on first. While I wait for that to dry, I'm going to give this terracotta pot a coat or 2 of chiffon cream chalk paint. That's the chalk paint that I'm going to use for the saucers as well because it's the closest color that I could get to match the bottom of the candle. So just a couple of coats of this will work just fine. Now that the saucers are dry, I'm going to give them the same color, and it's not chiffon cream because that's a Rust-Oleum color. This is a folk art home decor chalk paint, and this is called sheepskin. I'm going to try and duplicate sort of the rough texture of the candelabra itself. So I'm just taking the side of my paintbrush here and putting on just a little bit of black paint. I'm going to go around the top, around the edges, and then around the bottom rim as well. I know this doesn't match perfectly, but I think the colors complement each other nicely. The other thought I had was to paint these saucers black and then leave the candelabra the beige color that it is. Let me know if you think that would look better because I toyed with that idea, but then I thought it might be a little too harsh with it being all black. But I'd love to know your opinion on that. I added some lavender into that little terracotta pot, and that will be the center attraction of this piece. This one is a paddle board that I picked up at my Dollarama store for $4. I'm giving it 1 coat of black chalk paint just on the front and the sides. Now that it's dry, it's going to get 1 coat of white chalk paint, but a very rough coat. I want to be able to see some of the black peeking through. I thought I would quickly show you how I do the smashing of the cans. This is a large coffee can that I did in a project on a previous video, so I thought I would just pop this in here so you could see the process. Basically, you're going to open up the top and the bottom of the cans, and then you're going to use a rubber mallet to smash down the bottom end and make it nice and flat. Here's my two little cans that I'm using for today's project. I'm going to give it a spray of matte clear finish from Rust-Oleum just to make sure that my chalk paint sticks better. Using some coarse grit sandpaper, I'm going to rough up the edges, pulling in some of that black paint that was the first coat, and also going all the way down to the wood in some areas. The cans are going to get one coat of white chalk paint front and back. If you're going to be putting something in these cans permanent and you're not going to be taking them in and out, then you can just leave the can the way it is on the inside. However, if you wanted to switch things out and there's a possibility that you might be able to see the interior of the can, then I would suggest painting it white. I get a lot of questions asking about my tissue paper printing and how do I get my paper not to jam in the printer. Number one, I'm not sure. I do this for it all the time and it doesn't seem to jam. It could be the type of printer I have. I don't know. It's an HP OfficeJet 8610 inkjet printer. It doesn't jam any of the paper as long as I tape all along the top so that there aren't any open edges of tissue paper. And I do go down the sides just a little bit as well. And that will make sure that none of your tissue paper comes off or jams your printer. You can also tape the bottom, and I just use regular Scotch tape as you see me doing here. I smooth it out, I put the tape on, and then I put it in my printer as normal. So I also have a tutorial on this down in my description box if you want to go take a look at that video as well. So I already have my tissue paper printable on the tissue paper. I've got it ready to go. And now I'm just applying some Mod Podge to the front of the can. I don't want it to be a huge amount of Mod Podge, but just make sure that there's a good amount on there and that it's all covered really well. Then take the tissue paper and place it on the can where you want it to be. You can see here that I printed a little bit extra on the sides because I do want to wrap it around a little bit on the sides and towards the back. This is a French script that I put together just using a French letter that I found for free online. And I just grabbed some of these butterflies. They were colored. I made them black and white. And I'm just going to add both of these to my little cans. And I think these are going to look really pretty. Using fine grit sandpaper, get rid of all the excess tissue paper that you don't need, making sure that you don't tear any of it that is supposed to stay on the can. I wanted to make sure that these did not fall off, so I didn't want to glue them. Instead, I'm taking my little electric stapler, which has the option of brad nails. You could probably use a stapler as well, but I just thought I would try the brad nails and they were perfect. These are permanently on this board and will not fall off for anything. I love how this piece turned out, and the ability to change out the decor with the seasons makes it a year-round piece of home decor. I hope you like it. Last year, I was lucky enough to come across two bed frames. One came from a friend and the other was out in the trash. So I've got a ton of these spindles and I thought it was time to make some more candlesticks. I'm using some supplies from the dollar store and the thrift store. I've got these four little wooden salad bowls, or I don't know what kind of bowls they would have been, but they're sort of a flower shape. And I thought they would look really fun on top of all of these spindles. So I'm taking rounds from the Dollar Tree and I'm taking some of their other smaller rounds like you see me doing here, and I'm just going to create different types of candlesticks. I've got four altogether, so I'm going to do two with round bases and two with square bases. These squares are from the Dollar Tree. They are the ones that come in a pack of 6. I'm going to glue 4 of them together to make a nice chunky base for one of the candlesticks. I am using my Weld Bond glue to make sure that it's a permanent hold and nothing falls apart. Next, I grabbed the chunky candlestick or wood spindle that I have here, and I'm going to center it on top of the 4 planks that are now glued together nice and sturdy. And then I'll add some glue and add that little bowl right on top. I'm painting the 2 square bottomed ones with black chalk paint, and 1 coat is going to be sufficient because I'm going to be doctoring it up afterwards when it dries. The 2 round ones I'll be painting white, and I'll have to give them a couple of coats because this dark color here of the spindle has a reddish tinge to it, and it was really hard to cover. So 2 coats, almost 3. I'm really loving the look of this. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's really unique and different, and I think making a pair of them is going to be really fun to be able to style them up with candles or with florals and being able to change it out for the seasons. I am using some of my walnut gel stain and I'm going over the wood bowls. They have more of a gold, lighter tinge to them, as you can see the one on the left here. And I wanted to just deepen the color up a little bit. So 1 coat on the outside and then I'll do the inside of the bowl too. I have a dark brown antique wax in a paste form that I was looking for and I could not find it. So I went ahead and used this gel stain in walnut and just gave the bottom of these 2 black candlesticks one really good coat. I love how they turned out. They're sort of a brownish black tone, so they're not so stark, and they look amazing with the darkened bowl on the top. I thought maybe the gel stain might leave a sticky residue like sometimes the wax does if you don't buff it off, but it didn't. It dried really nice and clean. I didn't have to do any buffing to it. So I think I just found myself a new way to antique black. For the white candlesticks, I'm going to use this Folk Art Home Decor clear wax and I'm going to tint it a little bit of a brown color. I started off with just a little bit. You can see there's about the size of maybe a teaspoon or a tablespoon of wax. And then I just took a couple of little drops of brown paint, which is just the burnt umber that you get at any craft store. With this type of clear wax, which is in a liquid form, you don't have to buff this off if you don't want to. So it turned out really nice. I just wanted a subtle hint of brown, almost like an aged, old, weathered look, and that's how it turned out. I was really pleased with the result of this one. You could see some of the brush strokes a little bit, but I think that added to the character of the piece. I also used the gel stain on both of these bowls to give them more of a really rich, deep walnut color. And I am so excited with how these candlesticks turned out. I think they are so unique and so much fun. You'll have to let me know what you think. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching my video today. I really appreciate your support. If you're new to my channel, I'd love for you to stick around. Hit that subscribe button.
If you enjoyed this video, here's another one that you might like. And don't forget to check out my new channel, Schwowin Thrifts.